Sometimes when we want to launch a big project or start something new, we want answers fast. And this episode is exactly that. Today's episode is about how to start a podcast, but the crash course version. You will find out which questions aspiring podcasters ask the most often. I will tell you my honest opinions in 20 to 30 seconds, and we will get through these 20 questions really fast. Are you ready? This is Say Yes to Podcasting, where solopreneurs learn how to start podcasts that attract their ideal clients and do the marketing for them. I'm your host, Anya Lordanic. Say Yes to Podcasting today. Number one, do I need a niche or can I talk about multiple things on my podcast? Well, I always say to clients, you can talk about multiple things, but start with one. Choose one niche, be very specific, know who you're targeting, know who your listener is, and then you can get the luxury of branching out later on in your podcasting journey. Number two, how do I know if my podcast idea is actually good? Well, this is called market research. You can go to Reddit, Google, you can ask your friends, your peers, your future clients, your leads, anyone who might be a good podcast listener of yours to rate the idea you have. You can validate your idea in as little as a couple of hours and gauge if there is enough interest. But the fastest way you can do that is by going through various forums like Reddit and seeing what people are actually looking around for, what they're asking for. What are their specific questions? What questions do you see popping up the most often? Hence this episode. So it is way easier than it actually seems, and market research can be fun. Number three, should I start solo or with a co host? It depends. What I often suggest to folks is that they can start with a co hosted show, but they can record mock co hosted episodes. What do I mean by that? You can have a couple of recording sessions with a business friend or with a family member or with a friend just to see if that kind of show would suit you or if you would rather prefer a solo show. I will let you in on a little secret. I was a co host for a couple of years myself, and that format of podcasting is my favorite. When you find the person with whom you can record podcast episodes effortlessly, if you have this chemistry, if you have this friendship, if your discussions are fun and open and relatable, if you're not afraid to show a bit of your personality, co hosted shows can be great, but they can be a logistical nightmare. So I would always suggest solo podcast episodes for solopreneurs who want to launch podcasts as a business tool because that format makes the most sense for them. Number four, how long should my episodes be? Research has shown that we cannot listen to a single voice for too long without getting bored or distracted. So, my suggestion to you would be to keep your solo episodes somewhere in the range of 10 to 20 minutes. That's plenty of time to explain a certain concept, an idea, to tell a couple of stories, to mention a few client results, and to weave in your personality. Trust me. Number five, how often should I release podcast episodes? Once a week is the sweet spot. It is doable for solopreneurs and for folks who are tuning into your podcast every week. It is more than enough for you to stay top of mind. Number six, what's the minimum equipment I need to start? The minimum equipment is whatever you have in front of you right now. And this is controversial to say, considering the fact that I'm a podcasting mentor and I should be suggesting all kinds of professional microphones to you right now, but start with what you have right now. Whether that's a phone or something else, we have plenty of software at our disposal that can clean up even the most compromised audio files. Number seven, speaking of, do I need a professional microphone from day one? No, you don't need a professional mic from day one because I recorded a dozen episodes with one of my clients and all she had was her iPhone microphone and she sounded great. Number eight, what software should I use to record and edit? I'll keep it simple here. I use Riverside to record both my solo episodes and interviews. I will not be mentioning any more pieces of software because I want to keep this rapid fire Q&A very simple and very actionable. So my answer to this question is riverside.fm. I've been using it for years and I love it. Number nine, do I need to edit my episodes heavily? It depends on what you mean by heavily, but you don't need to edit out every time you say and ah because you're human and it is okay to say and ah and to stumble over your words because that's something that happens to me all the time. And I'm guilty too for overly editing those parts out. And this is something I realize whenever I listen back to my episodes because I see then that my pace might be too fast, that I might have and should have left in some of the silences, such as this one. Now, bonus question. Anya, can you answer these questions, but for me and my situation specifically? Yes, I can. We can talk about your future show during a 60-minute podcast roadmap call, which you can book by clicking the first link in the show notes. By the way, this opportunity for a call to action, the CTA, was too good to pass up, but now we will get back to our questions. We're at question number 10. How many episodes should I launch with? This is a great question because you should not launch with a trailer only. We should take advantage of our launch day and gain that momentum by launching with at least 4 episodes. Why is that so? Well, when people land on your podcast for the first time, if all they see is a 2-minute trailer, they might or might not listen to it. But if they see a trailer plus 4 very enticing podcast episode titles, they will binge them. And this is your chance to win over that listener and keep them coming back for weeks to come. 11. What should I prepare before I hit publish? Well, before you hit publish, you should lightly edit your audio files, make sure they sound good enough. And the most important thing is to keep an eye out on good episode titles. People don't take episode titles too seriously, when in reality, they can make or break your show. And I'm not trying to be dramatic here. If you're not intrigued by an episode title you see in front of you, you will never give them a chance and press play, even though the content might be amazing and just what you were looking for. Make sure that those initial touch points are of quality and that they attract your ideal listener. So, episode titles and light touches on the audio file. 13. How do people actually find my podcast? Thank you for asking this because the answer is not on social media. They find your podcast through various podcast players such as Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and they type in relevant search terms to find your show exactly. So if your show is called Dreams and Inspiration, your ideal listener will have a hard time finding you. But if your podcast is called Weight Loss for Postpartum Moms, you might be attracted to that one. 14. Is quote unquote new episode out now enough to promote my show? Same as the previous question, the answer is no. People on social media behave differently compared to people who are scrolling through podcast apps looking for podcasts to be listening to. People on socials are scrolling through, liking posts, maybe commenting, but they're mostly looking for inspiration, entertainment, a bit of education, but they're for sure not looking for a 30 to 60-minute podcast episode to listen to right then and there. 15. Do I need social media to grow a podcast? Yes, you might raise awareness about your podcast through social media, but your social media platform of choice should be doing different tasks for your business. The main thing I would like for you to take away here is to create posts that are suitable for the platform you're posting on. 16. How long does it take to see growth? The rule of thumb in the podcasting industry is whenever you make an experiment, give it 60 to 90 days to see if there's any improvements or any change in your stats, in your booked calls, in whatever you're trying to measure. And do one experiment and measure one thing at a time for the data to be accurate. 17. When can I start making money from my podcast? The answer to this question might be before you even launch your podcast, or 6 months or 18 months from the day of launching your podcast, because this depends on a lot of variables. But if you're doing things right, and by right, I mean publishing weekly episodes, staying consistent, addressing your ideal listener with every episode you publish, putting your CTAs at strategic places, sharing them confidently, not overloading your listeners with CTAs, making your intros to the point, inviting strategic guests to your show, such as your past clients. In that case, yes, you're doing all the right things. You have a really bright future with your podcast as a business tool. 18. Do I need a big audience to monetize? Absolutely not. As I said before, you need to find your ideal listener. And if you're targeting your ideal listener with every episode you publish every week, in that case, you're leading that listener slowly but surely to your paid services. And imagine having as little as 30 to 50 ideal listeners tuning into your podcast every week. I would take that any day of the week compared to thousands of non ideal listeners who are there every week but are not really that interested in the topic I'm talking about. 19. What makes people keep listening to a podcast? Everything I mentioned before: great flow, storytelling, getting straight to the point, strategic CTAs, not advertising something that is not in alignment with the overarching topic of your show, keeping things fresh, keeping things fun, and the fact that you're enjoying what you're doing. And trust me, all of that comes through in your voice. And the final question number 20. What's the biggest mistake new podcasters make? The biggest mistake new podcasters make is thinking that they need to launch a video only podcast on YouTube and try to look for sponsors who will sponsor their podcast. I will tell you what you can do. You can actually launch your podcast solo with solo episodes in an audio only format, talk about your expertise, and offer your own services. That's it. I don't know about you, but this episode went by really quickly and this was super fun to create. I hope you liked it as well. And most importantly, that you got your questions answered. If you have any more questions or questions tailored to your specific situation, you're always welcome to book a 60-minute podcast roadmap call, which you can book by clicking the first link in the show notes. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.